Hello everybody and welcome to a brand new Elder Scrolls Online character build video with me, Sherman. Today guys, I bring you something dark and sinister from the shadows, the Shadow Knight. Now before I get started, disclaimer, this is a roleplay, casual play build. This is not meant for meta play in any way. Now moving on, Shadow Knights are basically Knights of the Dark Brotherhood, and they hide in the shadows and attack from there, and they're very resilient because they tend to wear a heavier, more durable armor, but mixed with a medium armor, so they have more flexibility in their combat and in their motions of combat. These characters are considered Knights of the Dark Brotherhood, so they are Knights, but they use more of a shadow and blood type magic to hide and infiltrate their enemies' location and assassinate them. They are primarily assassin type characters, but they can also be tanks. So the primary role of this character is damage dealer. They can also be tanks and healers if you want them to be. You just have to make some adjustments, and I'll explain that when we get into the character, which we're going to do right now. So, as you guys can see, this is called the Shadow Knight Nightblade, and it is a knight character. It is an orc for this. Now, I chose orc for this because I wanted to use something different in the race than what most people would expect. And the orc fit really well into this combination as being an aggressive warrior, but also somebody who can be fast and agile on their feet. So it felt really well, or fit really well into this playstyle. Now, as you can see, to play this as a damage dealer, we do put 64 points in stamina, and yes, any race can play this. Just letting you know. So, 64 points in the stamina to play damage dealer. If you want to play tank, you want to put enough points into the health to make it around 30k, the rest into stamina. If you want to play this as a healer, you're going to take all your attribute points and just put them into Magicka. This is going to give you roughly about a 30k Magicka, 24k health, and like a 23k stamina. Alright, now moving on. We do have a 19,000 Magicka pool with a 24k health pool, 33k stamina pool, and this is with being an orc. We have a 637 mag recovery, a 446 health recovery, and a 1039 stamina recovery. Our weapon damage is coming in at 2434 with a 37% weapon critical. We do have 1607 spell damage with a 23% spell critical, and we have 18k spell resist with a 17, almost 18k physical resist. Now this is to maximize our survivability, our damage output, and our resource management. Our character is primarily a stamina-based character. Now moving on, we do have the Lover Mundus Stone. For being a damage dealer, you can use the Thief Mundus Stone, the Warrior Mundus Stone, or the Lover with this. All three work really well. And if you're playing this as a tank, it's best to go with the Lady Mundus Stone for the extra resistances. And if you're playing this as a healer, you can go with the Atronach Mundus Stone. Alright. Moving on to the food we use. Now, this build primarily and only uses Tri-Stat food. The reason why is because you are a divine, a holy knight, kind of. But you're not quite a paladin, but you do still draw on the divine powers of Sithis to help aid you. So you will pull upon his power to siphon, and his power to use the shadows, and his power of assassination to help play more effectively. So we use the Tri-Stat food for that. Moving on now to the inventory. In our inventory, we do use Tri-Pots for when we're tanking. We use Spell Power Pots for when we're playing healer, and we use Warrior Power Pots or Stamina Power Pots for when we're playing Stamina Damage Dealer. These are primarily Stamina Damage Dealers, so you want to have good mix of stuff here. Alright, moving on down. You can use a greatsword on the back bar if you want to. I am going to let you know that now, but for this particular setup, I run dual wield on both bars. It works amazing with this setup. Now, starting with our monster set, we are using the Spawn of Mephala. The reason we use Mafala is because we don't have anything for Sith this yet, monster set-wise. But Mafala's is also a really good addition to this because it does max stamina to your character on the one piece. The two piece, when you deal damage with a fully charged heavy attack, you create a web for 10 seconds that deals X amount of poison damage every second to all enemies within 4 meters and reduces their movement speed by 50%. This effect can occur once every 10 seconds. Another great set that you can use here is Krogs, but I prefer this one with this particular setup. And that's because you get more max stamina. Alright, so as you guys can see, this is the monster set we're running. The body set we're running is Night Mother's Gaze, and we use this because it's a very powerful set. It increases our weapon critical on the 2-piece, 3-piece weapon damage, 4-piece weapon critical, and then on the 5-piece. When you deal critical damage, you apply major fracture to the enemy, reducing their physical resistance by 5,280 for 6 seconds. This allows you that greater capability to break through their armor and deal more damage. So this makes you more of like an assassin type. You go in, you break their armor, you stab them with the other blade, they're dead. Kind of thing. The third set that we are running is the set that I chose for this because I felt it fit really well, and that is Searbane's Scales. Now this is a set that drops in the Thieves Guild DLC, but the 2-piece gives you max health, the 3-piece max stamina, the 4-piece max magicka. This allows you to tap into all 3 resources so you can use them effectively. Now depending on what race you are, there's some ways you can tap into magic more effectively or stamina more effectively, depending. The 4-piece on this reduces your damage taken by guards by 20%. This allows you to play more of the assassin type, so you can go and stealth around and do Dark Brotherhood's quests and assassinate people. And if you do get noticed by guards, you get 20% reduced damage taken. The 5-piece bonus is the best part though. When you deal damage, you have a 5% chance to cause a burst of Lamia poison that deals X amount, or 1,266 poison damage in a 5-meter radius, and an additional 7,596 poison damage over 6 seconds to all enemies hit. This effect can occur once every 6.5 seconds. So this pretty much will be going off all the time. And it's really cool. So I really like this set with this. Now, with being this poison-focused assassin, I felt it really was fitting for this combination. And the fact that we use the shadows to be more of a assassin type character, but we still use the shadows to aid and protect our allies and do other things like that. So we can do that if it's necessary. Now moving on to the traits and enchants of the gear, starting with the monster helm, we are using invigorating. Guys probably guessed that I'm going to use this a lot for a few builds. The reason why, it increases your health, magic, and stamina recovery by 11. Now, a lot of people think that that's really low, but when you add in all the percentage values, it actually grows quite a lot. But we wear 2 invigorating pieces. We'll get to the second one here in a minute. The next piece is the shoulders. We run Divines, heavy. Now, the helm is medium, and the shoulders is heavy with the Divines trait. This is so we can take advantage of Mundus Stones, and we also have a max stamina enchant in there. Moving on to the chest piece. We are using a heavy chest with reinforced to increase its resistance value by 16%. This gives you 3,215 spell and physical resist on this piece. This is the most powerful resistance piece you can get in the game, and it's the heavy chest. So we always want to make that reinforced if we craft a set. Now moving on to the gloves. We are using heavy gloves with max stamina. Divines, take advantage of that Mundus Stone again. The belt is light armor. Divines, taking advantage of that Mundus Stone with the stamina enchant. And then on to the leggings. These are the other invigorating piece. Now these use tri-stats in there. The bigger pieces you want to use tri-stats so you can hybridize your character. So like the belt, the helm, the chest, and the legs, we're going to use tri-stats. So you can hybridize, so you can play all three roles more effectively. You're going to use stamina on the smaller pieces because it's going to help maximize your stamina capabilities. But with this, the invigorating plays into it because it gives you another 11. So you actually get 22 extra health, magic, and stamina recovery depending on how you have your character geared out. Now moving on to the next piece, and that is the boots. We have divines again with the max stamina. Sorry guys. With the enhancement to Mundus stones, and then the max stamina for the enhancement to our stamina. Moving on to the jewelry, we have 2 trirunes. One on both rings, and both of them have weapon damage enchants. This is so we can maximize our weapon damage, but also maximize our ability to play all 3 roles. Moving on to the final jewelry piece, we have an infused stamina recovery. Now you can use an infused magic recovery depending on what race you're playing, and fall into using some other source to get stamina recovery, like the Serpent Stone. Now, moving on to the weapons. Like I said, this is a dual bar sword and dagger build. So use sword and dagger on both bars. Starting with the first bar, we have a sharpened weapon, disease damage, with, a disease damage enchant on a sharpened weapon. This is going to give you greater physical and spell penetration when you're on the front bar. This is going to allow you for greater spell and physical damage output. On the offhand, we are using a Nirnhone dagger with an absorbed stamina. This is going to allow us to maximize our stamina return, but also increase our damage output with that Nirnhone dagger. Moving on to the back bar, we have an infused sword with a weapon and spell damage enchant. This is to maximize both weapon and spell damage depending on what source we're going to draw from for whatever purpose we're using. Whether we're using for healing, damage, whatever, we can draw from both. Not a lot, but enough. And then our final weapon back here is another Nirnhone dagger with an absorbed stamina enchant. This is so we can maximize, again, our resource management with stamina, but also maximize our damage when we're on the back bar. So when we swap bars, our weapon damage doesn't change. Neither does our spell damage. Our critical changes by a little bit, but that's fine. We can go with a little bit of critical loss. Now that I've shown you guys that, we're going to go over the skills. And starting with class skills, guys, this is just my suggestion. Unlock the class skills that best reflect your ability to play the character. I primarily use stamina skills with this character on the incapacitating strikes, killer's blade, ambush, and relentless focus. And then on the shadow side, I also use surprise attack. And then on the siphoning side, I do use power extraction. These are all stamina based morphs. When it comes to the rest of the skills, I do unlock the rest, and I unlock all the passives so I can take advantage of them depending on the roles I play in and how I use the abilities. So that's something that I like to do personally. Moving on to weapons. Since we are trained with two-handed, we do take those abilities and passive, active and ultimate and passive abilities, and we do take advantage of this if we need it for tanking. Because tanking with the two-handed is going to be a little bit more effective for us than tanking with the dual wield both bars. Even though it's fun both ways. Moving on to the dual wield. We do unlock all the dual wield abilities, ultimate and passive, so we can take advantage of them. We do use Thrive in Chaos on the back bar. Alright, if you wanted to, you could also learn the bow with this. That also helps. Moving on to armor. This is a heavy armor build, but we do wear one piece of light armor, and we are going to take advantage of that light armor passive stuff. So we are going to take advantage of these light armor passives in our character build. Same thing with medium armor. We're going to take the top two and the bottom one. This applies to our character to make them more effective at being damage dealers on the stamina side, and then for support side, we get more effectiveness at being healers. Not a lot, but enough. Heavy armor, we are going to take all of them because we are in 5 pieces of heavy armor. Like I said, our shoulders, our boots, our chest, our legs, and our are all heavy, and then our belt and our helm are medium and light. Moving on to world skills, you can be a vampire with this. I have tried it. It's pretty fun, but not my forte with this character, so I left it out. We do use these abilities sometimes, the active ability and the ultimate, depending on situations, and also the passives. Moving on to guild skills, Fighter's Guild. We take all the Fighter's Guild abilities and passives depending on which situation or role we're playing. So if I do want more weapon damage on my character, I will put this on the front bar and put this on the back bar. Moving on to, and I do unlock all the passives too, so I can take advantage of them. Now, Mage's Guild, same thing. I unlock the Mage's Guild skills and abilities that best reflect my ability to play this character in different roles, whether it be healer, damage dealer, or tank. Psijic Order, and I should have known, I do take all the active skills here that best reflect my ability to play my character in different roles, again, plus the passives. Moving on to the Undaunted line, I do use all the active abilities here in different situations with different roles. Depending. Sometimes I like to use Shadow Silk in group scenarios. Sometimes I like to use Mystic Orb. Sometimes I like to use Sanguine Altar. Sometimes I like to use the Taunt when I'm tanking. So, it just depends. And I also like to use Spike Bone Shield for tanking. Assault skills, I take the ones that reflect me in PvE, not PvP, so these are more geared towards PvE side. And the same with the support skills. I also take the passive here, Magicka Aid, because if I have any of these slotted, I get 10% more mag recovery. Moving on to Orc. I am an Orc with this. Like I said, they do get Brawny, which increases their max standby 2,000. They also get Unflinching Rage, which increases their health. And then when you deal damage with a weapon ability, you heal for 660. This effect can occur once every 4 seconds. This really helps with you in sustainability and survivability. Swift Warrior increases your weapon damage by 258 and also reduces the cost of sprint and increases your movement speed of sprint by 10%. This really helps you out. Now, crafting. Alchemy. And I knew I forgot something here. Medicinal use. When using a potion, resulting effects last 30% longer. This is really important. I wouldn't say it's a necessity, but it is really important to use. Same thing with Gourmand and Connoisseur. Right. Now that I've shown you this, I'm going to go over the skills on my bar, and then we're going to talk about CP. Starting with the first ability we use is Rending Slashes. Now this is a very high damage output ability, because it does damage up front, it does damage over 10 seconds, and then it also reduces movement speed of enemies by 40% for 4 seconds. The next ability we use is called Bloodthirst. Now this does damage in 5 consecutive hits, each dealing the same amount, and then when on the final hit you deal 300% more damage and heal yourself for 66% of the damage caused. The next ability we have is called Surprise Attack. And this one, you slash the enemy dealing X amount of damage, and if you're flanking the enemy, shred through a small portion of their armor, reducing their physical resistance by 5% for 10 seconds. Attacking with a surprise attack while sneaking or invisible, stuns the enemy for 3 seconds, and sets them off balance for 5. Alright. Next ability we have here is Shrouded Daggers. Now this is a floater, so there is another ability I like to use here, which is Power Extraction, and that is mainly because it also boosts my max Magicka pool, but I will use this power here as well. I'm going to go over both of them. So Shrouded Daggers, fire a secret blade from your sleeve, dealing X amount of damage. The dagger bounces 2 times to nearby enemies, dealing even more damage on the first bounce, and then more damage on the second bounce. It also grants you Major Brutality, increasing your weapon damage by 20% for 20 seconds. Then we have Power Extraction. Now this one's really cool because you siphon the vigor from your enemy's blood, dealing X amount of disease damage to all enemies. If an enemy is hit, you gain Major Brutality, increasing your weapon damage by 20% for 20 seconds. So it's very similar to the Shrouded Daggers, except it's more of an AoE. Now, I will also sometimes use the dual wield Steel Tornado here, just because it's an AoE damage ability. Now moving on to the next ability we use, it is Killer's Blade. Now this does a really powerful hit. So it basically, you thrust a blade of lethal precision to stab the enemy, dealing X amount of disease damage, and deals 300% more damage when the enemy's health is below 25%. It heals you for a certain amount of health if the enemy dies within 2 seconds of being struck. The portion of this ability scales off your max health. The next ultimate, or first ultimate, is Incapacitating Strikes. This does X amount of damage to the enemy, causing them to take 20% more damage from your next 6 attacks, or next attacks for 6 seconds. It costs 120 ultimate for 120 for the ultimate. The enemy is silenced, so you can silence the enemy if you wait until you get to 120 ultimate. While slotted, you gain Reeve, which restores 100 magic and stamina when you deal damage with a light or heavy attack on the enemy with a negative effect on them. So anything that we have that applies a negative effect will give us this Reeve thing. It's really nice. Usually I'll put like Reaper's Mark here sometimes, just so we can take advantage of that 100 resource return. Back bar. Again, dual wield. We use Shadow Image. Now this one, you summon a shade version of yourself to stay in place and attack the enemy from range for 20 seconds. The shade shoots the enemy, dealing X amount of magic damage. The shade's attacks inflict minor maim, reducing the enemy's damage done by 15% for 4 seconds. And then while the shade is summoned, you can activate the ability again to teleport to the shade's location. This ability scales with your highest offensive stat, so that's why we use this. And the minor maim is really nice. Next up, we have Deadly Cloak. This, envelop yourself in a protective cloak of razors, gaining major evasion for 15 seconds, reducing the damage from area attacks by 25%. For 3 seconds, or every 3 seconds, the shrapnel will pulse, dealing X amount of physical damage to all enemies within 5 meters. It's a nice AoE dot. Then we use Razor Caltrops. This one, you basically hurl a bunch of caltrops in the air and they explode outwards, dealing X amount of damage on the explosion, and then X amount of damage over time for every second for 12 seconds. And it also reduces movement speed of enemies by 30%. Our next ability is Reaper's Mark. Now this is where we put affliction against our enemies that allows us to get those resources off the front bar as well. This puts major fracture and breach on the enemy, reducing their spell and physical resistance by 5,280 for 20 seconds. When a marked enemy dies, you heal for X amount of health and gain major berserk, increasing your damage done by 25% for 5 seconds. This portion of the ability scales off your max health, and you can only have 1 Reaper's Mark active at a time. Next ability we have is Leeching Strikes. Now this one, whenever you activate it, and whenever you deal light attack, you heal for so much, and you gain 106 stamina for 20 seconds. Anytime you do light attack or heavy attack damage, heavy attacks do restore double the amount. Now, when it ends, or if you activate it before it ends, you restore X amount of stamina when the effect ends, based on the length of time that it was active. Our next ability is our other ultimate, Thrive in Chaos. This one, slash enemies in front of you, dealing X amount of physical damage over 8 seconds and healing for 56% of the damage done. Each enemy hit increases the damage done by 5% for the duration, up to a maximum of 30% more damage done. We use this primarily on trash packs. Alright, now that you guys have seen the skills, we're going to talk about CP, starting with the red tree. We have 56 in Ironclad, reducing your damage taken against direct damage attacks by 20%. I was tweaking some things with the CP earlier because of a different race. I was doing Breton. Spell Shield, increase the spell resistance by 1729 with 18 points. And then over here we have 31 into Thick Skin, reducing your damage taken from damage over time effects by 13%. 43 into Hardy, reducing your physical poison disease damage taken by 10%. 43 into Elemental Defender, reducing Flame Frost, Shock, and magic damage by 10%. And then moving on over here, we have 40 into Bastion, increasing the effectiveness of your damage shields by 16%. We have 19 into quick recovery, increasing your healing received by 5%, and 20 into heavy armor focus, increasing your physical resistance by 1900 while wearing 5 pieces or more of heavy armor. Moving on to the green tree, we have 40 into warlord. This reduces your break free cost by 16%. We have 16 into sprinter, reducing your sprint cost by 10%. 16 into bashing focus, reducing your bash cost by 10%, and then over here we have 43 into mooncalf, increasing your stam recovery by 10%. We also have 75 into tenacity, increasing your magic and stamina return of your fully charged heavy attacks by 14%. This is primarily for when you're tanking, and if you're playing a healer character, you can take this 43 out of here and put it in the arcanist if you want. Moving on, we have 40 into tumbling, reducing our dodge roll cost by 16%. We also have 40 into shadow ward, reducing our block cost by 16%. This is so we can block more effectively and dodge roll more effectively, of course. Moving on to the blue tree, 43 into bless. This increases your healing done by 10%. Moving on over here, we have 35 into physical weapon expert. This increases your light and heavy attacks for two-handed, one-handed sword and shield, or one-handed and shield, dual-wield bows, and werewolf form by 20%. And then we also get mastered arms, 40 points, which increases direct damage done by 16%. And this allows you to unlock Butcher, which increases your damage done with light and heavy attacks by 5%, enemies below 25% health, which, by the way, dual-wield Slaughter increases the damage of dual-wield abilities by 20% against enemies under 25% health. So all this stuff stacks up and adds into the ability for your character to get greater damage in your light attacks and your abilities themselves. Alright, moving on now to the final blue tree, where we have 56 in the mighty, increasing your physical poison disease damage done by 12%, 56 in the precise strikes, increasing your critical damage and critical healing with stamina abilities by 20%, and 40 into thaumaturge. Now, if you guys haven't seen my other videos, there is a hybrid setup I use, which is basically 43, 23, 43, 35, 40, 23, or 20, 23, 43. And this allows you to hybridize your character into a more effective damage dealer, tank, or healer, depending on how you want to play. So, but that's pretty much it for the CP, guys. Now I'm pretty sure you guys want to see what this thing can do for damage. So we're going to go down here and do a quick parse on this little precursor guy, and then we're going to swap and go up there to the big guy, and we're going to parse on him. So the first thing we're going to want to do is drink our potions, activate our buffs and debuff, and then summon our shade and go to town. And I didn't even use my execute. That's 26,000 damage right there on that enemy, which isn't too bad. We have a higher drain on our stamina because we are in heavy armor. We don't have really good resource return, so you have to be careful when playing something like an orc with this. Wood elves make great builds for this. So, but yeah, you can see here 53% weapon critical. We did have 10,000 physical penetration with the 53% there, and then 3192 weapon damage. If you want to see what the spell side looks like, we have 1833 spell damage, 23% critical, a 70% critical damage, and we have 10k spell penetration as well. So, alright, now we're going to go over here, we're going to mess with this guy, doing the same thing pretty much. So buff, potion, all that, summon our shade. Oops, I did that wrong. Dang it. That's what I meant to do. And this is the cool thing about this, is if you do this, and you do the right rotation, and you can get fast enough at it, you can pull about 30k DPS on this thing regularly. So, and if you can keep the heavy attacks going to where you get the resources out and everything like that, and you can keep your shade coming, you can actually do really good on that on DPS. Like I said, about 30k DPS, and you can sustain. So even in organized group play, that's what that one's used for. That's what you guys can expect. Now, I am going to switch some things around so I can make this more solo friendly, so I can take it into a dungeon and show you guys what it's like. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually change a few abilities. We're going to grab Swallow Soul. We're going to put it where the daggers thing is. We're going to move this over along with this, and then we're going to grab the guild skill, Undaunted Bone Shield. Now, the reason we did this is so this way we can maximize our capabilities, but we're also going to use another, actually, we're going to change that. Let's change this to the Dark Cloak, and then that way we can use, on the back bar, we can actually use the Twisting Path. So we can still keep up our resistance buff, and we can also do a little bit of damage, and the Dark Cloak will actually heal us for quite a bit. So, alright, let's go ahead and jump over to Depths of Malatar, where we are showing the testing of these builds in solo play. And you have to understand, this is also how I would pretty much set it up if I was playing a tank. So I might change out one of the abilities for the ranged taunt, and that's about it. And then take this character in and tank. They can play really good off-tanks in trials and main tanks in dungeons. Now, if you are going to off-tank in a trial, I would suggest using Sword and Shield and Dual Wield. But if you're skilled enough, you can tank the other way. Alright, so let's go ahead and jump in here. We're going to see just how effective this character really is, because I know some of you guys are excited to see this. I already have tested this, so I already know. Alright, here we go, guys. Big Cheesehead. And I haven't even used a potion yet. Well, we're going to use one now. Sorry about that little trimmer. I'm trying to watch it. And this should be... I'm going to go ahead and let this kill me, guys, because I need to get this. It's probably important. So... But that's pretty much it for the Shadow Knight, guys. I know that some of you guys are probably wondering, like, can this thing solo? Yes, it can. It's really powerful solo. It's really powerful doing pretty much anything, including tanking. So... let me know what you guys think of it. I really like this build, and yeah, it's a lot of fun. So, you guys know what's coming next. If you like this video, go ahead and hit that like button. If you guys want to see more videos by me, please subscribe. Other than that, I want to thank you all for watching. Until next time, have a wonderful day. And this guy might see you in game. Bye.